reviewing the scene as it is portrayed in A Course in Miracles, where, I'm sorry, Julie, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I do. My camera is not working for me to be able to
Uh-huh.
show my face, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to say I'm still happy to read, and
yeah,
that's why I'm not purposefully not engaging.
right. Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying that. That's,
yeah.
yeah, perfectly understood. Thank you. So two different clusters. The Course sometimes refers to them as constellations. The ego has its constellation, and for every idea that the ego presents, the Holy Spirit offers a different interpretation, a different constellation. And these are just a few of them. We're in that section in chapter 19 that especially focuses on the difference between interpreting something as a sin, as a violation against God's plan, versus an error or a mistake, simply part of one's learning journey, and much easier to forgive and to progress through than the consequences of sin. And so, let's see, I'm going to skip over this next two slides so that we can get into the material, and we'll come back to that at the end if there's time. So this is chapter 19, the unreality of sin. Hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader for this session is Julie.
The attraction of guilt is found in sin, not error. Sin will be repeated because of this attraction. Fear can become so acute that the sin is denied the acting out. But while the guilt remains attractive, the mind will suffer and not let go of the idea of sin. For guilt still calls to it, and the mind hears it and yearns for it, making itself a willing captive to its sick appeal. Sin is an idea of evil that cannot be corrected, and yet will be forever desirable. As an essential part of what the ego thinks you are, you will always want it. And only an avenger with a mind unlike your own could stamp it out through fear.
Mm-hmm. So this, at the root of the ego's view of sin, is this pervasive sense of guilt and really being attached to guilt. I know this is perhaps abstract and deep, but the Course would say that the whole idea of being guilty is the very essence of the ego's thought system. And then upon that, it builds these other concepts. And sin is certainly one of the most popularized and ancient concepts, where we have violated God's laws. And what the ego would have you believe is that as a result of that violation, that it cannot be corrected, that it is beyond forgiveness. And furthermore, that remember, we said it's an essential part of what the ego thinks you are. The ego wants you to believe your very nature is not love, but is sinful, guilty sin. And it is so hyper focused on this idea. It's obsessively focused on this idea. And so that has consequences. a footnote to this is while in your own consciousness, you may not be fully aware of this impact of this idea of sin. Certainly, it is in the broader gestalt, the broader ideas throughout our world. And that has an effect on the way we think, our concepts. And so, in order to be free, we have to expose any lingering remnants of belief in the reality of sin so that we can bring them out into the light, have them forgiven, and be free ourselves. And in that way, we can then become messengers of that freedom.
The ego does not think it possible that love, not fear, is really called upon by sin and always answers. For the ego brings sin to fear, demanding punishment. Yet punishment is but another form of guilt's protection, for what is deserving punishment must have been really done. Punishment is always the great preserver of sin, treating it with respect and honoring its enormity. What must be punished must be true, and what is true must be eternal, and will be repeated endlessly. For what you think is real, you want, and will not let it go.
Yeah, there's two ideas here we want to bring your attention to. One, the first statement, the ego does not think it possible. It denies the possibility that love is really called for by sin. This is stated in another way in the Course that when somebody is really hurting inside, they might appear angry and mean and unkind. That is really an indication of their hurting, that they're calling for healing. In the same way, someone that is overly occupied with the idea of sin and heavily invested in that is really calling for love. It's a sense of an inner, again, this is the illusion of an inner void, an inner emptiness, or an inner darkness that they recognize in some way and are projecting outwards. And the Holy Spirit views that as somebody calling for help, calling for healing, and calling for love. And the ego doesn't think it's possible that love is what's being called for. The truth is that we all have a responsibility of what thoughts we make meaningful in our own mind. And when you think an idea is real, you will attach yourself, you invest in it, and believe it to be true, regardless of the reality. And then once you decide that, you'll hold on to it until you decide to change your mind and ask Holy Spirit to help free us from that. You will not let it go. A thought held in your mind, a decision, remains in effect until such time as you change your mind about it.
An error, on the other hand, is not attractive. What you see clearly as a mistake, you want corrected. Sometimes a sin can be repeated over and over with obviously distressing results, but without the loss of its appeal. And suddenly, you change its status from a sin to a mistake. Now you will not repeat it. You will merely stop and let it go unless the guilt remains. For then you will but change the form of sin, granting that it was an error, but keeping it uncorrectable. This is not really a change in your perception. for it is sin that calls for punishment, not error.
Mhm. So we're going to explore further this idea that an error in the mind, a mistaken perception, or a judgment made upon false foundations um, can be calls for correction, calls for a change in mind. And that can have one of two outcomes. One, you can superficially change your mind. This would be where you decide that it's no longer true, but the guilt still remains in your mind. This is like a weed who you pull the surface level leaves off, but the roots remain. It remains alive and continues to sprout more weeds, where the guilt still remains. That would be one possible outcome. Obviously, that is not healing. And then the other one that is promoted by the Holy Spirit is where you change your mind and become free of the guilt that was the basis for the judgment to begin with. And so this is winds up being the deeper work, is freeing yourself from the guilt. How can you free yourself from something you don't fully understand how you got there in the first place and don't know what to do to get rid of it? And so this is where we need the Holy Spirit, who understands this maze of confusion and knows how to guide us through it.
The Holy Spirit cannot punish sin. Mistakes he recognizes and would correct them all as God entrusted him to do. But sin he knows not, nor can he recognize mistakes that cannot be corrected. For a mistake that cannot be corrected is meaningless to him. Mistakes are for correction, and they call for nothing else. What calls for punishment must call for nothing. Every mistake must be a call for love. What then is sin? What could it be but a mistake you would keep hidden, a call for help that you would keep unheard and thus unanswered?
Mm-hmm. So we want to adopt the Holy Spirit's view regarding these activities and actions that she calls mistakes, and know that to the Holy Spirit, all mistakes can be corrected. She would even say that's what we're here for in time, is to learn to forgive and have all false judgments and illusions corrected. That's what we are here for. And so it's meaningless to believe that a mistake cannot be corrected. And how could you apply this? So let's say there's someone that you know or have heard about that did something that seems at one level unforgivable. Well, the Holy Spirit views them, not necessarily their actions, but their being, the individual, as just having made a mistake and needing a change of mind, and recognizes that their mistake was really due to a belief in lack of love. It's a call for love. And this happens a lot. Or maybe that person whose actions are unforgivable is you. Maybe you hold yourself guilty for something in the past. It really is a law of mind, a law of forgiveness that includes everybody, them as well as you. And so we have to, the solution here is to know that all mistakes are forgivable and that even in the making of them, it indicates a sense of confusion, a sense of lack of love. A mistake is a call for love. So let yourself off the hook and let others off the hook. Just know that when they're hurting and they act out on their hurting, that is really a call to a healer to help heal. David, your hands up.
Thank you, JC. This is so important. And I just wanted to share something with the group that I found very helpful. I've borne great enmity toward a family member for years. And every time I think about when they go to the Golden Gates, they are going to be greeted with no less love and compassion and understanding than I am.
Yes.
So why am I going to bear this enmity? God knows they just made an error. And it's very helpful to me because I don't have a right to say that. I am the little ripple. I am the little beam of nothingness, really. Anyway, it's very helpful for me to recognize that I am a spirit and I'm not a body, and then let it go. It's a miracle. Thank you.
It is a miracle. And letting it go is really the way to clear the path for your own happiness. Okay, so mistakes are a call for love. And we can learn to adopt that perception, that interpretation, both towards ourselves as well as towards all others whose actions, we're not endorsing an action like someone who murders someone. We're not endorsing the action. We're saying that that does not condemn that person as a sinner forever.
In time, the Holy Spirit clearly sees the Son of God can make mistakes. On this you share his vision, yet you do not share his recognition of the difference between time and eternity. And when correction is completed, time is eternity. The Holy Spirit can teach you how to look on time differently and see beyond it, but not while you believe in sin. An error, yes, for this can be corrected by the mind. But sin is the belief that your perception is unchangeable and that the mind must accept as true what it is told through it. If it does not obey, the mind is judged insane. The only power that could change perception is thus kept impotent, held to the body by the fear of changed perception, which its teacher, who is the one with it, would bring.
Mm-hmm. So he's invoking the awareness that time is different from eternity and that time is for learning, for forgiving, and for correcting. But eternity, there's nothing to correct, there's nothing to forgive. Eternity, or your awareness of eternity, it is understood, or you awaken to it when correction is completed. When the whole cycle of learning is over, the whole cycle of forgiveness is completed, that's when a full awareness of eternity comes to mind. Prior to that, you might have a holy glimpse of it, an instant of recognition, but not an ongoing, sustained awareness of it. And so the Holy Spirit has the big plan in mind of getting us to wake back up to eternity and is wanting to teach you and I how to look on time differently. This is more important than you might think. I want to dwell on this a minute. To look on time differently and to be able to see beyond it. So, guilt and sin and the entire ego matrix are all woven into our former concept of time. They are, when you say time, the ego then immediately rushes in its narrative about time, which is this whole, what I call the evil world theory, and all the things that have gone wrong for millennia since the beginning of time are all accumulated and still in the mind now. And there's great guilt around all of that. So, in the contrast, in the concept of eternity is free of all that. All there is nothing to forgive in eternity. It's all idealized. It's all perfect from the beginning. It's all loving. There are no rebellions. There is no separation there. And so, in order to help us become happy and free, the Holy Spirit has to teach us how your attitude can change towards time. But as long as you believe in sin, you will not be able to learn the lesson. For in other words, as long as you're invested in, I'm going to play the ego here. I have every right to judge other people for their wrongs, for they are guilty and they deserve to be punished. As long as some notion of that lingers in your mind, it prevents the Holy Spirit from raising your consciousness up and seeing time differently. And I remember when I recognized this years ago. This is something I memorized. What is sin? What is the concept of sin? It's the concept, the belief that your perception in ego darkness cannot change. This is a denial that you can change your mind. The ego believes that once you're born in sin, you live in time, it's forever. And that describes your very nature. The ego would have you believe sin is permanent. And many people, whether they subscribe to that or not, do believe that. So I'm reluctant to mention individual names because that becomes very controversial and stirs up emotions and everything. But you can come up with names in history and in the media for people who are thought to have done things that I would agree are reprehensible. But is it changeable or unchangeable? That's what everything hinges around. Are they guilty to this day, or did they merely make a mistake? Upon this fork in the road of what you choose to perceive, everything rests on that. And so the ego will try to keep you convinced of the belief in sin, and the Holy Spirit will wait patiently until you're willing to let go of those cherished beliefs and adopt her view that looks on guilt and time very differently. I So this idea of time and eternity is abstract because you can't see time and eternity per se, but we can symbolize it. We can use visuals to represent it. Um, just know that time has a beginning and an ending, and it's over. Um, Reality would never reach an end, for that would be the end of reality, which makes no sense. But time has an end, and the Holy Spirit is preparing us when we follow Holy Spirit's teaching, preparing us to for that ending how by learning to look on time differently, even now, and see it as merely a learning journey. Yes, mistakes will be made. Yes, there will be situations that call for our forgiveness. And yes, there's things that we have to learn, and that's all it's for. And once that is complete, once all that is completed, time will transition into eternity. And I guess in this image, at the end of this bridge, symbolizes the transition into eternity. Let me say one more thing. This is an interpretation of art. The image here on the bridge symbolizes you on your journey across the bridge, still in time, still learning to forgive. And the image at the end of the bridge also represents you at the end of the journey, when time becomes eternity. This is your true self. This is the self that you don't fully recognize while invested in guilt and in sin and in time.
When you are tempted to believe that sin is real, remember this. If sin is real, both God and you are not. If creation is extension, the Creator must have extended himself, and it is impossible that what is part of him is totally unlike the rest. If sin is real, God must be at war with himself. He must be split and torn between good and evil, partly sane and partially insane, for he must have created what wills to destroy him and has the power to do so. Is it not easier to believe that you have been mistaken than to believe this?
So I really like this. This is so transparent, so plain. Creation is extension. In creation, the Creator extends his self, which was captured as "let us make man in our image." Creator extended himself. And it's impossible that what is part of the Creator is totally unlike the rest of creation. To me, that is so logically pure and clean and simple to understand. The Creator's plan was to bring forth a creation like himself, and it's impossible that it not be that way. Nevertheless, the belief in sin is that there is a part of creation that's unlike the Creator. It's a belief that there is both good and evil in God's creation, and that there is both a happy God and a very sad God because of sin. And the question then is, what's easier to believe? That God has got this split personality, or that all is in accordance with his original intention to make man in the image and likeness of the Creator. Upon this, this is somewhat of a theological positioning. Upon that idea, we then wind up conceiving of ourselves. What is true of us? Are we in the image of God? Or are we corrupted by sin?
While you believe that your reality or your brother's is bounded by a body, you will believe in sin. While you believe that bodies can unite, you will find guilt attractive and believe that sin is precious. For the belief that bodies limit mind leads to a perception of the world in which the proof of separation seems to be everywhere. And God and his creation seem to be split apart and overthrown. For sin would prove what God created holy could not prevail against it, nor remain itself before the power of sin. Sin is perceived as mightier than God, before which God himself must bow and offer his creation to its conqueror. Is this humility or madness?
Mm-hmm. I was reading something this morning that is outside of A Course in Miracles, that is commonly referred to as the mind-body connection. You will see this come up a lot in the world. And mind-body connection is that your mind and your body are united and in a state that's your nature, that the body is just as important as the mind to your nature, to your being. And this is exposed in the Course of Miracles as level confusion of believing your body, which at best might last 100 years if you're fortunate. And then what happens to the body? All those cells and tissues disintegrate into ashes, into nothing. And so the idea that that is your nature is an assertion that you're going to die. Because if the body is and the mind are bound together in one nature and the body dies, which it surely will, then that would imply your days are numbered. And so these are beliefs, and those beliefs we've identified as level confusion, and it completely ignores your eternal reality in spirit. Again, we just read a moment ago that the Holy Spirit wants you to view time differently. Wants you to view, yes, we are going through a learning journey in time, but it's temporary. It's only until we learn. And then we have all of eternity, which is our long-term true, that's where our true nature unfolds. And so many beliefs will stem from this very fundamental confusion about your being identified with your body. The Course would say it is a temporary vessel. The Course would also say that the body itself is really neutral. Your mind winds up deciding what you'll use it for, whether you'll use it to communicate love and helpfulness and healing, or whether you'll find some other purpose for your body.
If sin is real, it must be forever. If sin is real, it must forever be beyond the hope of healing. For there would be a power beyond God's capable of making another will that could attack his will and overcome it, and give his son a will apart from his and stronger. And each part of God's fragmented creation would have a different will, opposed to his, and in eternal opposition to him and to each other. Your holy relationship has, as its purpose now, the goal of proving this is impossible. Heaven has smiled upon it, and the belief in sin has been uprooted in its smile of love. You see it still because you do not realize that its foundation has gone. Its source has been removed, and so it can be cherished but a little while before it vanishes. Only the habit of looking for it still remains.
So I think this is really, I like this description of the separation. This is the illusion of the ego, that each part of creation exists in a fragmented, separated state, and each part has a different will, that those wills are separate from the creators and are actually in opposition to the creator, and also that all those wills are in opposition to each other. That's the separation. It's the idea we're all on our own. I remember a song, I don't know, this is probably not the right moment, but I'll say it anyway. A song that describes this, it's called You and Me Against the World. It's just you and me against the whole world. Well, there's a there's a separation concept right there. Again, these ideas have been around for millennia of time, and they're woven into many of the narratives as well as the songs that are sung. The counterpoint to that, the reinterpretation, is in the Course's concept of your holy relationship with all of creation. Your holy relation, which is an eternal reality. It was true at the beginning of creation. It's true now. It's true forever. It has a goal, and that goal is proving that that separation idea is impossible, that we could all be fragmented into separate pieces. And so the holy relationship actually becomes the basis for restoring our minds to sanity, because it realizes that we have a part to play in God's plan for salvation. And it's a part where we're all in this together. And it's a part where healing and forgiveness and inner peace prevail. And the way it describes it is the notion of the separation has long since gone, but its source has been removed, referring to the separation. But it can be cherished a little while before it vanishes. Only the habit of looking for it, looking for the separation, still remains. This is to say that it's stored in psychological terms in the subconscious memory of your mind. It's the belief that the worst possible separation scenario is real. That belief, if it's still held on to, it lingers around to discolor your perception, but its reality never was. It was never true. Only the habit of looking for it still remains. And so this program of mind training, I'm thinking of the workbook lessons now, is about forming a new habit of how to look at situations on a daily basis, of how to let go of the old perception and develop a new perception so that it looks on the world through the lens of the Holy Spirit.
And yet you look with heaven's smile upon your lips and heaven's blessing on your sight. You will not see sin long. For in the new perception, the mind corrects it when it seems to be seen, and it becomes invisible. Errors are quickly recognized and quickly given to correction, to be healed, not hidden. You will be healed of sin and all its ravages the instant that you give it no power over your brother. And you will help him overcome mistakes by joyously releasing him from the belief in sin.
Mm-hmm. So this is really helpful. This is how you and I can apply this. So I will suppose or predict that somewhere, maybe in this week or somewhere this month, someone will do something or say something to which you will react impulsively with a judgment against that person, that thought and feeling will arise in your mind and then you get to decide what to do with it. And what the Course would say, in the new perception, the mind corrects it when it seems to be seen. And then the error becomes invisible because errors are quickly recognized. Oh, that's just an ego judgment against my brother, quickly recognized and then quickly given over to the Holy Spirit for correction so that it can be healed, not buried back in your subconscious. And personal experience of this, the details don't matter, but I remember I was in a room of people, and I think they were talking about layoffs. They were about to have layoffs, right? And they're announcing, "Oh, we're going to cut 10% of the workforce," and I think it again. The details don't matter. I think they were going to let the secretarial staff go, and that I was not going to be affected, but obviously they were. And I remember something arising in my mind that was unkind reaction towards the secretarial staff. Like, oh, we never really needed them anyway. What do they do anyway? Or something like that. And I'm in this room of people, and this is fairly meaningful to us. Are we going to have a job or not? And then I immediately recognized, ooh, that's a nasty thought. And immediately sought to heal my mind from it. And the words that came to me there was, there for the grace of God go I, where I saw myself in the other person's shoes of how would I react if they were telling me this will be your last day, collect your things. And all of a sudden I didn't feel so critical of the others. All of a sudden I realized that these are just human beings that are doing the best they can, are given a situation. And I had compassion for them. And so the key to practicing A Course in Miracles rest in this statement: errors are recognized quickly. So that pay attention to how you feel. When a judgment of somebody else comes up in my mind as another person not being worth my time or my love, that has a sting to it. It's a nasty what I do with it, whether I choose to embellish it or recognize it as a mistake, is up to me. But I submit that you can all recognize your own feelings when they arise there. And the key habit, we talked about, a new habits have to be formed, or else the old habits will still prevail. The key is in quickly recognizing these errors. I'm not saying that's where we begin, but that's where we have to get to so that we don't spend hours and days harboring our judgments of guilt against others, but that we recognize right away that this needs to be healed and not hidden. So this is where practicing the workbook lessons is really the manual for being able to more quickly recognize an error and more quickly give it over to the Holy Spirit for correction. It's the essence of practicing this program.
In the holy instant, you will see the smile of heaven shining on both you and your brother, and you will shine upon him in glad acknowledgement of the grace that has been given you. For sin will not prevail against a union heaven has smiled upon. Your perception was healed in the holy instant heaven gave you. Forget what you have seen and raise your eyes in faith to what you now can see. The barriers to heaven will disappear before your holy sight. For you who were sightless have been given vision, and you can see. Look not for what has been removed, but for the glory that has been restored for you to see. Look upon your Redeemer, and behold what he would show you in your brother. And let not sin arise again to blind your eyes. For sin would keep you separate from him, but your Redeemer would have you look upon your brother as yourself. Your relationship is now a temple of healing, a place where all the weary ones can come and rest. Here is the rest that waits for all after the journey, and it is brought nearer to all by your relationship.
And frequently the Course refers to choosing again, to changing your mind, to your willingness to see according to the new perception rather than the old habits of the old perception. And I think it is summarized so succinctly here. Forget what you have seen and what you believed in the past, the habits of the old perception. Forget them and make a new choice to raise your eyes in faith to what you now can see. This is freedom from the past, freedom from the belief that the past and the future are identical and that perception cannot change. Remember, we said sin is the belief that perception cannot change. And instead, free yourself in an instant, in the moment, where you willingly choose to raise your eyes in faith to what you can see now. This is the essence of the holy instant, where we shift. I was just sharing a moment ago in that room where the first thought that came to my mind was a judgment against others as not being worthwhile. And immediately I recognized that I don't want to be harboring those attitudes towards others. And my mind was changed. So forget what you have seen or what you may have believed in the past. These are habits of thought and emotion that have been with us for too long, and be willing to have them undone. This is the essence of forgiveness, your willingness to let go of those habits of thought and feelings of the past and choose in the present moment to raise your eyes in faith to what you can now see. And when you do that, the Holy Spirit comes rushing in to enshroud you and the person who's you're giving attention to. This is a holy instant where heaven shines on you and your brother. So that's our vision. That's where the Holy Spirit would take us to. That is the guarantee that we've been given. And the future sessions in this chapter, of which there is at 4 or 5, depends on the pace at which we take of it, will be about the obstacles that may stand in our way as we willingly step forward in faith and raise our eyes to see the light. We're going to encounter what we would call ancient obstacles, such as the fear of death, the attraction of guilt. And we want to identify those obstacles because they really don't have any power. But as long as they hide in the corners of your subconscious mind, it will seem as though they have power in your mind. And we're going to expose them. We're going to bring them out into the light. So we expose them and see that they are just ancient beliefs, and that we can, as we just read, forget them and let them go. So that's where we're headed. We're headed into the deeper waters. It feels like to me, it's the deeper waters. I don't say that to scare you, but to help you to understand this is the necessary work that has to be done in order to unchain our mind from belief systems that are ancient, that were here long before any of us were born, and that still hold people back into a narrow, negative, and dark point of view. We deserve better. We deserve to be free. We deserve to be happy. We deserve to be healed. And A Course in Miracles has a very systematic plan to help us with that. So thank you all for your courage to undertake this journey back home, back to the realization of the truth of who we are. And thank you, Julie, for your lovely reading. Look forward to connecting all again with you real soon. Namaste.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you all.
Thank you,
You're
Julie.
welcome. Namaste.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jonica.
everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Jonica.
Peace and love.
I like that. Thank you, Jonica.
You're welcome.